Today's edition of Mac Voices is brought to you by Blue Apron. Blue Apron delivers fresh ingredients and recipes to your door so you can cook something new and interesting tonight. Check out this week's menu and get your first 3 meals free with free shipping by visiting blueapron.com/MacVoices. Blue Apron, a better way to cook. And by Mac Voices Magazine, our free Flipboard magazine that brings you some of the best Mac, iPhone, and iPad productivity tips on the web. High in signal, low in noise, just like Mac Voices, Mac Voices Magazine includes information on how you can get more out of your Apple technology. Subscribe at macvoices.com/magazine or search for Mac Voices Magazine on Flipboard. Welcome to Mac Voices. This is the talk of the Apple community, and I'm Chuck Joyner. Folks, we're back in track after an extensive set of CES videos, and I'm happy to have back for the first time in 2017, Mr. Joe Kissell. Joe, it's great to see you, but there's something different about you, Joe.
Something different. Well, I'm a year older. You know, I just turned 50.
Wow.
So clearly that must be what you're seeing.
Yeah, no question.
I'm pretty sure. I mean, people are telling me that when everybody turns 50, your hair kind of goes a little wacky. So I just assumed that was like that's just what happens. You know, that's just one of those things. So
yeah, I like it. I like it. And I want to make sure folks understand that just in case the color correction doesn't quite get it right, this is purple.
It is purple. Yes, it is the purplest purple that I could find.
Yes, it is. On my screen, it's pretty purple. I hope it's purple out there for you folks.
I was going. I mean, you know, every monitor will display it a little bit differently. But if you were to see me in person, you would go, "Wow, that is pretty intense."
So this could be seen as a public service that if you're questioning how your monitor is showing colors, you can now calibrate off Joe's hair, and you got it. You know, if
you calibrate off my hair, I think you're going to have all kinds of problems.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's been it's been a conversation starter. The kids at my son's school, in his first grade class, love it. They think it's hilarious.
Oh yeah.
And I'm just wondering about, people who are listening to this rather than seeing it, what they're thinking, but their loss, I guess. It's I've never had so many random strangers just strike up conversations on the street or at Starbucks or whatever. It's been different. It's been kind of nice. So I don't know how long I'll keep it, but it was an experiment that had to be tried, and I'm enjoying it so far.
I got to go down that road for just a second. What kind of conversations do they strike up, Joe? Do they ask about it, or is it just, hey, how's the weather?
No. I mean, a lot of people will lead with, wow, I love your hair, or kids will say, did you know your hair is purple? And I'll say, well, I stopped eating my vegetables, and this just happened. So, so a lot of people are just like, all right, but what I've noticed is that there are entire segments of the population, people who I would normally be invisible to, and people who I would never sort of think to communicate with, who have crazy hair or tattoos or some other odd thing about them. And now they kind of look at me and go, oh, he might be one of us, rather than just, oh, here's some random old guy. And so it's really neat to be able to feel like I am a part of a larger group of humanity than just, random old guy. So I get to interact with people who I would not normally interact with, because now we have kind of an excuse, something to talk about. And, like I'll be at the grocery store and at the checkout, and the woman would say, oh, man, I am so jealous. I wish I could get my hair colored purple, but they won't let me, here or whatever. And everybody's like, what kind of job do you have that you're allowed to do this? I'm like, oh, I'm a writer. Yeah. Oh, that explains. And then there are people who say, I would have done that if I still had any hair when I turned 50. So anyway, I got all kinds of reactions, but it's been fun.
Well, I think it's safe to say that you're never going to just be considered random old guy. That's just not going to happen, no matter what color your hair is. So
I will take some action to make sure that doesn't happen.
thank you. Thank you. So for 2017, we're starting off on a bit of a different note because you've got another Take Control book, but this one is, I think it's definitely different than anything you've done before. This is Take Control of Your Digital Legacy.
It is different.
Yeah, and I came back from CES and I was completely healthy for about a week and then crashed and burned. So a few days ago, as we record this, I was probably thinking about maybe being in need of this book. So if I sound a little questionable, folks, it has nothing to do with Joe's hair. So all that said, where did Take Control of Your Digital Legacy come from? The idea and the eventual book?
Well, I've written about all kinds of things. I've written about software and hardware and online services and Thanksgiving dinner. The one thing I really haven't written that much about yet is death. And I think really of all the books on death you read this year, mine will probably be one of the most fun. At least that's what I'm going for.
Okay, that's a really interesting introduction, Joe.
Several months ago, there was a really big survey of Take Control readers. Many, many people sent in their responses. It was a really massive, lots and lots of questions asked about what kinds of things people wanted to read about and what kinds of things they really didn't care about reading more of. And much to my surprise, the number one most requested title in that survey by a considerable margin was this one. It was, what's going to happen to all of my data when I die? And this question kind of takes several forms. And it's something that I have been hearing a lot of. Like if I go to a user group and I talk about passwords, somebody will come up to me after the presentation and say, well, that was great. I'm 89 now, so I probably won't be around much longer. How do I make sure that my son can access all of my passwords after I die? Or I'll talk about backups or some other, cloud storage or something. And somebody will say, okay, yeah, this is good, but how do I make sure that my stuff will stay accessible in the cloud or accessible to the right people after I die? And these sorts of questions have taken lots of different forms, but people keep asking them. And it seems as though there's just an increasing amount of anxiety now that so much data is digital and so much of it is in the cloud. You think about, your house, your car, your money when you're writing a will, but do you think about what's going to happen to all of my Facebook posts? What's going to happen to all of my email? What's going to happen to my tens of thousands of photos? What about my iTunes music collection? What about all these documents, the books I've written or the things that I've purchased or all the stuff that's on my computer it's important to me. It could be important to my kids. It could be interesting to my great-grandchildren. It could be interesting to historians in the future. But it's not just all going to survive indefinitely on its own. If you want to, take control of what happens to your data after you die, you need to take some steps right now to put your digital house in order, so to speak. So the book came out of basically questions people were asking us, and a lot of people expressing a desire to know what to do with all this massive amount of data they have in the more distant future. Will this survive for 10 years, 50 years, 100 years? Hard drives wear out, CD-ROMs lose their data, stuff happens, cloud services disappear. How do I make sure that my digital data will, outlive me? But also, the flip side of that, people are asking, how do I make sure that after I'm dead, nobody can ever see these email messages or these blog posts that I'm kind of embarrassed about or whatever. So I kind of look at both sides of it. It's basically a matter of you making the decisions that you feel are best but deciding that now while you still can about how your data or if your data will persist in the future.
Joe, we could probably be here for 3 or 4 hours talking about this. So, but I want to try to hit a couple high spots and then send people to the book. One of the first things I think I would ask is, are any of the major services, and I'll let you define what I mean by services, are they giving you the tools that you need? And if they are, do you think those tools will remain in place and in force in perpetuity?
Yes, somewhat, and who knows? So I have a whole chapter on social media because that is a particular area of interest for some people. Obviously, some like my mom uses Facebook. She doesn't use Twitter. And she doesn't use LinkedIn or Instagram or any of those others. So she would probably just skim that chapter. Some people are really deeply into all kinds of social media. Some people aren't into any. I'll talk about Facebook as an example. So Facebook has a thing where you can right now say, I am designating somebody to take over my account if I die. And my wish is that after I die, there will be like one final post, my last words, and then my information will still be up there. It'll still be archived and available online, but there will be a little note, here's my date of death, and it's not going to be active. It's not going to keep, accumulating comments and things like that in the future. So that's one example of a way you can handle it. Twitter and Instagram and LinkedIn and all the other social media sites have policies in place where there is a procedure that someone can go through if an account holder has died, to do one of several things. You can either just say, I'm going to download the data, store it locally, but I'm going to take down the entire account. It will no longer be online. Some people prefer to do things that way. Or I'm going to memorialize it online, so it's there, but it's kind of frozen in time, maybe with or without a final post. Or I'm embarrassed that I ever was involved in Twitter in the first place, so I'm just going to delete my account and try to make as much of this stuff as I can evaporate from the internet. And there's a sense in which it's really hard to get things to go away from the internet, but there's also a sense in which you really can't tell what's going to happen in the future. So I do talk about different options you have and where exactly you would go for each site to learn about what they offer you in terms of, post-mortem options. But in terms of how long will these things last? You make a decision. Will this company even still be in business in 5 years? Will their policies change? Can you be sure that your data will still be there? Well, who knows? One of the interesting things that happened as I was writing this book is I was doing tons of research on companies that offer digital legacy services of one kind or another. Like there are some companies that say, do you want to leave one final email to your loved ones after you're gone, or one final whatever, some kind of message or documents that you pass on or something? Just leave them with us. And then we'll have this process that we will go through to very carefully verify and confirm that you are actually dead. And then and only then will we pass on this information. Well, that sounds neat, except at least half a dozen companies of that sort have gone out of business in the last few years. And in fact, one of them went out of business between the time I started writing the book and when I finished writing the book. So you're putting all your eggs in this basket. You're saying, please take care of my data and send it to the right people in the right places after I'm dead. But you don't know, are they going to stay in business that long? Could something tragic happen to my data while it's sitting on some server someplace? It might. So while I don't say to never ever use these services, I do recommend being kind of circumspect about it and having that not be your only plan, for sure.
Joe, it strikes me in listening to you that it might be a good idea maybe to have this included as some of your estate planning with your attorney.
Yes.
And I have to wonder, did you find any law firms that are starting to recognize that this is part of the service that they should be addressing?
Sure. Some of them do. My assumption in the book is that I'm not going to assume that your attorney or your estate planner has any particular level of technical, skill or awareness. So I try to give you everything here, and then I say, well, you're going to need to discuss this with them and see if, how, and what ways this is going to sort of integrate with your regular will. So at the simplest level, you might have your will. It's going to talk about your money and your house and car and stuff, and your executor, who will carry out the wishes for your will when you're dead. And also, you might have a digital will that is not just a digital version of your regular will, but rather a will that talks about what you want to have happen to all of your data and all of your accounts and passwords and all those sorts of things. And you'll have a digital executor who will carry out those steps for you. And that would need to be somebody that you trust, that you know well, but who also is technically adept enough to deal with this stuff. In an ideal world, your regular executor and your digital executor would be the same person. That would be the easiest way. That would be the cleanest way. It isn't always possible, but if it can't be the same person, those people definitely have to coordinate with each other. And you have to make it clear to your attorney, who is going to, hold on to your regular will, that don't forget about this attachment. Okay, don't forget about this other stuff that this other person is going to have to handle, because even though it might not be convenient or reasonable or easy to express your wishes for all of your digital stuff in your regular will, and just like imagine having to update that every year. It could be a real nightmare. I think it's a lot simpler and cleaner to keep that document separate, but to make it clear in your regular will, there is also this other element to make sure that everyone involved, the executor, the digital executor, if they're two different people, that this is all part of a whole, all part of the same plan that you would like, if possible, to have executed when you're gone.
If you've never been the executor of a will, it's funny. It doesn't sound like much. You're going to clean up the paperwork and all, but when it hits, you realize what an awesome responsibility it is, because now you're responsible for the end of someone's life, of kind of wrapping things up and making sure it stays neat. And it strikes me that, boy, if you're assigning someone a digital executor, if you will, that's almost as important as the regular executor. I mean, there are debts and financial assets and all to be done with the regular, but your online presences can have really far-reaching effects.
It can, absolutely. This is a person to whom you are going to need to entrust your passwords. This person is going to have to get into your accounts, if for no other reason, to shut them down. But in some cases, they'll need to download data, they'll need to archive it, they'll need to answer some last emails, whatever stuff. They'll need to deal with your details, and so you have to really, really, really trust them. It is a big deal and a big responsibility. And although there are, of course, steps that you should take before you die to put your data in the right formats and store it on the right sort of media so that it will last as long as possible, it could also, depending on the circumstances, fall to your digital executor to do some file conversions, to take stuff off of your computer and put it someplace else for safekeeping, stuff like that. And it is quite a responsibility, because it is forever. You're not going to get a chance to undo this. Having said that, though, one of the things I emphasize repeatedly in the book is that this isn't just about death. I mean, death is great. No, I don't mean that. It's not just about the distant future. It's about the present too. So it turns out that a lot of the stuff you do right now to prepare for your digital legacy can also be useful, if you get sick, or you're in a car accident, you're out of commission for a couple of weeks, or even you go on vacation and you need somebody else to take care of business, to reboot your web server, to pay your bills, to whatever, do stuff for you. Or even, maybe part of your process is I have this huge box of photos that I want to scan because I want to add them to my digital collection and send those on into the future. But once you've done that, this is now part of your live archive that you can more easily share with other people, with friends and family members, and so on. So there are lots of things about doing these organizational steps and this planning that can help you right now and can help you in very temporary ways before you're dead. So I don't want you to think of it as only people at the purple hair stage or older should consider this. I mean, this is stuff that anybody can and should do, and it's really I think an incredibly worthwhile exercise that can solve a lot of problems and give you a lot of peace of mind, even for something as simple as a temporary illness.
No, I think that's great advice, and it's a great perspective that we don't just get hung up here on the final arrangements. Right now, we've talked a lot about social media services and a lot of the online stuff. Let's talk about some of the hardware that is sitting around here.
Yeah,
lots of it. There's a lot of data on this hardware. There's a lot of confidential financial stuff, obviously, personal photos, personal videos, things that maybe I wouldn't want just shared anywhere. There's that whole wild weekend in Cancun. And then there's the other stuff that you wouldn't mind, going anywhere. Any tips or thoughts on how we go about organizing this in the event of, as you said, an accident or something a little less permanent, or as a final solution?
There are a bunch of questions wrapped up there. One of them, I'll try to tease them apart a little bit. One of them is segregating stuff that you don't mind sort of making public from stuff that you want to restrict access to, and then maybe there's some other stuff over here that you don't want anyone ever to know about. And that last bit is really tricky because, if I keel over at the end of this interview and somebody walks in the room, my computer's unlocked and anybody can see anything. And if there were files on there that were, incriminating that I would want no one ever to see, well, they could see them. So on the other far extreme end of the spectrum, there are those people who say, you know what, once I'm dead, I don't care. It's not going to make any difference to me. And whatever fallout there is, somebody else can deal with that. So I recognize everyone's going to fall somewhere on that continuum. I offer some suggestions for how you can identify or segregate data that you want to make public versus data that you want to pass on to just particular people, versus data that you want to delete. But, no matter how hard you try, there could be a situation in which there's this delete me immediately upon my death folder, let's just say. And you trust your digital executor with your life, but they take the last peek anyway.
Yeah. Yeah. What
you can encrypt it or whatever, but there is only so much control you can exert after your death. So I feel like the main point of the book is to think through this stuff, to identify what kinds of things you have, to try to separate them into these different piles, and then try to see, okay, now what could I do to make sure that my son gets this and that the public gets that and that nobody gets the other? Understanding that this is not a perfect world and you might not get exactly everything you want, but to get as close as possible. So that's kind of part of it. Another part, though, is you're talking about all the devices around you, and I have lots of devices around me too. Actually, most of them are up here. But anyway, I have lots of devices, and as I look around at the stuff in this room, there's literally nothing that I can see here that I would trust to store my data for even 10 years, let alone 50 or 100. I mean, how many times, I don't know about you, I can't tell you how many times I've had a hard drive die after like 3 years.
Yep.
Happens just all the time. I looked at like how long are warranties on consumer hard drives, and the longest warranty I could find was 7 years, and that was quite unusual. But even if you had a warranty, like a 7 year warranty on a hard drive, all that would mean is that if it died, the manufacturer, if they're still in business, would have to replace it. That doesn't mean that after 7 years, if it died, that the manufacturer could recover your data. That's something totally different. So I don't think hard drives are a very good idea for long-term storage, even though they're, big and cheap. And then there's optical media. Ordinary CD-ROMs and DVD-ROMs deteriorate over time. They just, exposure to light and heat will hurt them, but even just the passage of time can make them unreadable. So there are these companies that sell archival quality CDs and DVDs that are especially, expensive, and some of them are supposed to last for 50 years, 100 years, 1,000 years. And I'm like, well, that's neat. I'm glad that your CD-ROM will last for 1,000 years, but do you think you're going to find a CD-ROM drive 1,000 years from now? I mean, think about how hard it is to find a floppy drive today when every computer in the world had them 20 years ago. And now, project 100 or a couple hundred years in the future, it doesn't matter that your floppy disk is perfectly intact if there's no way to read it. So we have these sorts of problems. Now, cloud storage is interesting in that the companies that run cloud storage sites are going to keep refreshing the hardware as needed. So if a disk dies, they'll replace it, they'll have a backup, they'll move the data over, and that is one way that your data can persist longer. Of course, will the cloud service still be in business 100 years from now? Will somebody be able to pay for it that whole time? Those are interesting questions to ask. There is a company that makes these sapphire disks, and sapphire, which is used in the crystals of the high-end Apple Watch editions, super strong. So what they do is they take a wafer, like a 2 or 4 inch in diameter wafer of sapphire, they laser etch stuff on it. Then they fuse another layer of sapphire onto it. And they say this dual layer laser etched sapphire disk is indestructible. It will, it's impervious to heat, to magnetic fields. They say you can literally drop it in lava and it will be okay. Okay. Anyway, so they're like, now, if you want long-term storage, this is what you want. And you don't put it in a CD-ROM drive or something. You read it with a microscope. It's just printed really. Your stuff is printed really small on it, and you use a strong magnifying glass or a microscope to read it. And they're like, that's totally future-proof. There will always be magnifying glasses, so your stuff can be readable on into the distant future. So that's neat. If you have, more than $1,000 per disk to spend on one of these things, and if it doesn't get lost or whatever. So the point I make in the book is that there are lots of ways to store your data. Every one of them has at least one drawback, sometimes multiple drawbacks. Over time, storage will probably get cheaper and more reliable. But we don't have anything today that is guaranteed to last centuries. So the best you can do is choose the longest lasting media you can, store it really carefully, maybe choose a couple different kinds. Maybe you do the archival DVDs, but you also do cloud storage, or you do the cloud storage, but you also do the Sapphire disk, or whatever. You pick a couple. You store them in different places, and you instruct your digital executor. You make the request. You can't guarantee this. You make the request that, would you please, every 5 years or 10 years, go make sure you can read this and maybe copy it on to new whatever that seems to be good at that point, and ask your family, your children, your grandchildren, would you please make it a habit of every so many years you go and look at this and try to copy it onto something that is likely to last. It also helps, of course, if they can integrate this into their own data. So if I if my mom left her archives to me, and I just say, okay, this is all in a folder, and this is going to get backed up in multiple ways with the rest of my stuff. And so I'll take as good a care of her stuff as I take care of mine, and then that will get passed on to my son, who will hopefully do the same thing. That is another way of keeping your data alive. But whatever you choose, I say, do it multiple ways, just like you do with backups, and you do your best. There aren't any guarantees for the very, very distant future.
I'm finally finished releasing all of the interviews from CES, so we're back to our normal show formats, and that means I have a little more time to share information on Blue Apron. I'll be telling you more in the future shows, but for now, let's hit a few of the basics and the high points and why I'm loving it. First, Blue Apron delivers fresh ingredients to your door for a very reasonable price, less than $10 per person per meal. That's great because first, I don't enjoy going to the grocery store. Second, I don't enjoy spending time in the grocery store. Blue Apron comes to you. That's a big check mark in both the convenience and affordability categories for me. Second, not only do they send you the ingredients, but also the recipes. Bonus points for sending me exactly what I need to make the recipe. No more, no less. And for sending everything I need to make the recipe. No more, no less. Few things are more frustrating than starting dinner, following the recipe, and discovering you're missing a critical ingredient. That doesn't happen with Blue Apron, so your results are pretty much guaranteed. Third, and most important, the recipes are delicious. We're not just talking the same old recipes either. Blue Apron will expose you to all sorts of new ingredients in new ways, so not only are you eating well, you're learning and expanding your culinary horizons. More check marks and bonus points in multiple categories. There's a lot more to tell you about Blue Apron, and I will soon. But for now, I want you to try Blue Apron. Right now, Blue Apron will send you 3 free meals with no shipping costs right to your door, just by visiting blueapron.com/MacVoices. That's free food, free shipping, and great free food and free shipping, just to try them out. You literally have nothing to lose and everything to gain. So please, go to blueapron.com/MacVoices right now, take advantage of this offer, and cook something great tonight. Blue Apron, a better way to cook. Thanks to Blue Apron for their support of MacVoices. Hey, I'm trying to outthink you, and I don't think I can. I mean, what would you go and buy a brand new Macintosh with a CD drive, burn all your stuff to CDs, then take that Mac and, all the statistics of the details about the power supplies and everything, seal it all up in a vault and say, here it is, unearth it. This is what you need, the kind of pet juice you need to feed it, to bring it back to life, and then start trying to read. But even then,
you could. I have. A number of years ago, I bought a synthesizer. It was used. It was a model that had been popular like 10 or 15 years earlier, and I bought it very, very used. And this was a model that had a floppy drive in it, and the floppy drive didn't work because, I don't know, I don't remember the exact thing, but it was like some rubber gaskets had deteriorated over time, and it just physically fell apart. With any mechanical device, you are running the risk that the mere passage of time, even if you don't touch it, even if you preserve it in, the perfect temperature and the perfect humidity, that the mere passage of time can cause things to deteriorate. You might say, well, okay, how about an SSD? SSDs have no moving parts, which is true. And all things being equal, they tend to be more reliable and, have longer lifespans than hard drives. But even SSDs can randomly lose their data in certain spots over long periods of time. And you just have no way to be absolutely sure that they'll last. So, one piece of advice is anything that's super, super critical, you could put on paper, because at least paper is a known quantity. We're we've become really good over the millennia at figuring out how to keep paper safe and intact, in ways that we can't necessarily guarantee with digital media. I imagine that if we revisited this topic in 20 or 30 years, there would be a different answer. That people would feel that they have a much more reliable long-term solution to data storage. But as of right now, there just aren't any guarantees.
And let's keep it in perspective. There are no guarantees with paper or with photography. You can go and get the acid-free paper and you put it behind the museum glass. But at some point, if the building burns down, it's gone. So it's not like there is this perfect solution even before this. That our technology has not taken us to a place where we can't preserve. If anything, we probably have a better chance of preserving a lot more than generations in the past. It's just that we also have to pay attention and figure out how to do it.
Right. I mean, one thing I will say is that the more copies you have of something, the better your chances are. So an option that exists, not suitable for everything or for all kinds of data, but a thing that you could consider is you can actually upload almost anything you want to the Internet Archive, archive.org. You can create an account there, and you can say, here's documents, ebooks, photos, email, whatever. Now, they don't guarantee that they will keep everything, that they will, accept everything that you upload, but it's not just for websites. They're trying to be an online library of basically all human knowledge. So if you are willing to have all of your stuff be public and searchable for eternity-ish, you can upload it to the Internet Archive, and people are going to find your stuff there and go, oh, well, I'm going to copy this and put it on my website, and they're going to your data, at least the interesting or important data, is going to find its way into all these other servers all over the place, and the more different copies there are, the more likely it is to persist. But you only do the best you can do. Again, this book isn't about definitively solving impossible problems. It's about thinking through things. It's about trying to be aware of what you need to consider and what your priorities are, and do the best you can and ask people who come after you to do the best they can.
Joe, we've hit a couple areas here. Is there any major areas of the book that we haven't touched on, just to let people know what else is in the book?
There's so much.
Yeah,
so,
yeah.
I talk about making an inventory of your digital assets. And this is something that I thought really deeply about for some time, because I know where everything is on my computer. I know where my email messages are because I know how I file them. I know where my documents are because I know how I name things and where I put them. But somebody else sat down at my computer is not going to even know what to search for. So it's one thing to say, oh, well, if you're looking for an old email message, you just search for keywords in it. Fine, but if somebody doesn't even know that the message exists, they won't know what the keywords are or how to search for them. So it would be nice if you could have kind of an index of all your stuff with explanations of what you have and where it is. But, I've got over 1 million files on my computer. I'm not going to annotate every single one of them. So what I suggest is kind of a compromise. You want to have a very short list, maybe 10, 12, 15 topics that are like the major categories of documents you have. Maybe it's my financial records and letters I've written and, love poems that my, secret lover sent to me back in 1980 that I want to have destroyed. Whatever. You have your big categories. And for each category, you write down what kinds of things you have. Just like a sentence, not a big deal, and how you go about finding them. So when I want to find this super short story that I wrote that nobody else knows exists, I would go to this folder and I would look for this keyword. Whatever. You're not describing every single file on your computer or every single folder. You're simply listing the major categories of stuff you have, generally what's there, with a hope that you'll kind of put a little asterisk by the stuff that's really interesting, really important to you, and how you go about finding them. Now, if you do this and your answer to how you find absolutely everything is, oh, it's just one of the 10,000 files on my desktop, then I might say, could you consider maybe making a few folders? Could you, just help out the people who come after you just a little bit to reduce the amount of chaos? If you have nothing but time and you really want to reorganize every single file on your computer and all your email messages and all your photos by Dewey Decimal classification or whatever, be my guest. That's fine. That's beautiful. I know I don't have time to do that. So rather than try to reorganize everything, I would just like to have a couple of pages that give some clues as to what the good stuff is and where people can find it. And then I'm pretty much done.
Joe, is this the most important book you've ever written? Do you think?
I think it might be.
I think it might be too. I'm serious. We like to joke a lot, but you've written some pretty important books, and I know we've used that line a couple times. But this one strikes me as, really at the very least one of the top 3 or 4 in importance.
Well, this really ties into a lot of the stuff the other stuff I've written, about backups and passwords and social media and all these other kinds of things. But this is the one that's kind of forever. This is permanent. This is, I've written how many different versions of books about Apple Mail and iCloud and MobileMe and .Mac and you write books about upgrading to the next version of Mac OS that's only going to survive for a year and then it's going to be replaced. And I've written so many books about software that's just, well, it's fine for that version, but then 6 months later it's out of date. And I've written some books that are kind of more evergreen and have a longer appeal, like your paperless office. But this one is even different from that in that you are making decisions that could have relevance centuries from now, and this could be your only chance or your only reminder to do that. So I think it is incredibly important. Certainly, more important for some people than others, more important for some kinds of data than for others. But I've been really encouraged and enthused by how many people are really excited about this title. And, I was, we had Adam and Tanya and I had all these discussions about really, Joe, you're going to write about a book about death and how are you going to sell that? Are people going to line up around the block to buy a book about, a depressing topic? But I don't think of it as depressing at all. I think of it as life affirming. I mean, okay, I'm just going to tell you this story. So my mom and her sister decided to sit down one day and plan their funerals. And I'm like, do you have something to tell me, Mom? She's like, no, I'm fine. But I know what I want, and I know that if I don't write that down, that's not going to be the way my funeral goes. So my mom's name is Grace. And one of the things she has said for years is I would be very, very upset if anyone sang the song Amazing Grace at my funeral. Do not do that. She is adamant that no one sang Amazing Grace at her funeral. And this is something that's important to her.
Sure.
So because somebody's going to think that's a clever pun. So here's how I want to be remembered. Here's what I want to, people to say. And I mean, not verbatim what I want people to say, but the kinds of things I want, what songs I want to have and how I'd like to be remembered. And I just, and she's telling me about this and she just thought it was a hoot. She thought it was great fun. It was like a party. They had a tremendous good time planning their funerals because they realized, you don't usually get to make decisions like this. Well, in my book, I talk about another thing, which is writing your own obituary. That's an autobituary. And you can do it. Why not? Why leave that job to somebody who's going to be grieving and stressed and not really be able to put their finger on, in that moment, what's really important about your life, why not do it yourself? A lot of people have done it. There are some great examples online. You say about yourself what you would like to say about yourself, and then just ask your executor to fill in the date of death and the cause of death and publish it. So I think this is a way. It's literally taking control of your digital legacy, right? It's saying there's going to come a point when, by definition, literally everything is out of my control. But rather than just leave it all to chance, I'm going to do the best I can do now, and hopefully, have a lot of fun with it, to state my wishes and to make sure that the people who come after me remember me the way I would like them to. That's what it's all about.
I love your story. That's the approach that my family has always taken as well. Let's plan ahead. Let's make sure everybody's on board, so that way there can't possibly be any disputes. That what's going to happen is what the individual would want to happen.
Right.
And it's only morbid if you cast it that way. Otherwise, it's not a lot different than saying, what would you like for dinner tomorrow night? Because we're going to have to go to the grocery store. Now, I realize I'm going to probably get email for that, but really, that's the way it is. And that comes, that's not just the digital legacy stuff. That's the services, that's the caskets, that's the tombstone, that's the whole bit. It's not that big a deal, and you feel so good when it's done because you know that you've taken the burden off of someone else, whoever that might be, husband, wife, brother, sister, whatever. So I'm with you. I think this is so good, and I guarantee you, we're about to talk about the price of the book. Joe's book is going to be a whole lot cheaper than
priceless.
It's going to be a whole lot cheaper than an hour with your attorney. So, Joe, with that, what is the book going for?
So it's a $15 book. Okay. Now, for that $15, you get not just the book, you also get a template for your digital will. So all throughout the book, I talk about things like your inventory of digital stuff, your online accounts, your passwords, your files, your email accounts, your social media, all this kind of stuff. I talk about inventorying them, and I talk about all these different categories of things that you might want to express your wishes about, and your obituary and all these other things. So what I've done is I made an editable RTF file that's a template you can fill in. And if there are some categories that don't apply to you, you just delete them. And if you need some more of something, you add them. If you don't like my headings, you change them. It doesn't matter. But it gives you an easy way to start. It's easier to start with fill in the blank than start with a blank sheet of paper. So it's a downloadable template that comes for free with the book that can help you on your way to creating your digital will, and it'll fill in your digital executor and how to contact them and all those other things. And I would like to say it has a lifetime guarantee, but I don't really know what that would mean. but let's just say I'm really proud of this book. I worked hard on it. I like it a lot. I had fun writing it, which is not always the case. And from what I've heard from people, it addresses something that people are really interested in and concerned to know about. I hope it scratches the itch. If not, hey, we'll make a new version. We can always update it. But I do think it's an incredibly important topic. Even if you don't follow everything in it, even if you follow just a tiny bit of it, to just have that awareness of what things somebody else is going to have to worry about afterwards, I think can help an awful lot.
I agree. And of course, takecontrolbooks.com is where you get it.
Yes.
So $15, Mr. Joe Kissell. Joe, really, thank you. Thank you for the research that you put into this. I will say one thing, and I think we need to be serious about this, that, I have not read the entire book, but this is not legal advice. So
that's right.
By all means, consult your local counsel to make
Absolutely.
sure you're doing what you need to be doing legally. But from a digital and practical standpoint, this is really good advice.
Absolutely.
Do one more thing for me, please.
Yes, sir.
Give me a profile with the purple hair. Oh, it's purple the whole way around. I love it.
Oh yeah, it's.
I love it. I love
Oh
it.
yeah. Absolutely.
All right. Happy 50th. A little bit late, but happy 50th.
Thank you very much.
All right.
So far, so good. I'm not dead yet.
Glad to hear it.
So
we'll be hearing more from you
more
this
can
year.
one ask?
Yeah, we'll be hearing more from you this year as far as more books.
Oh, will you ever?
Okay.
This is going to be a big year.
Great.
Great things are afoot.
Great. Well, we'll talk to you soon then.
Absolutely.
Folks, I'm Chuck Joyner, and this is Mac Voices. I hope you take Joe's advice to heart, and I hope that we did not offend anyone, because we're trying to take on a tough topic, but as Joe said, it's a really important topic, and so please at least go and look at the book and consider purchasing it for your peace of mind, the peace of mind of those that come after you. Until the next time, thanks for watching. Visit MacVoices.com for show notes, links to subscribe, and to connect with Chuck on Twitter, Google+, Facebook, YouTube, Vimeo, SoundCloud, the Mac Voices blog, the Mac Voices Dispatch, our weekly newsletter, and on Mac Voices magazine, free on Flipboard that helps you do more with your Apple tech. Advertising handled by Backbeat Media at backbeatmedia.com, bandwidth provided by CashFly at cashfly.com.